Do you believe we can have a soft landing?
No, it's impossible. People have to realize the enormity of this bubble. There is not a comparable bubble in real estate. This is going to be worse than the crash before, and it's going to be way worse than the real estate crash in the Great Depression.
All right, so here's Harry Dent Jr. yet again claiming that home prices are going to crash in 2025, somewhere between 50 and 80%. So we're going to talk about in this video why Harry Dent Jr. is completely wrong when it comes to the 2025 housing market crashing. We're talking specifically about prices. And so before we get into all the reasons as to why the housing market is not going to crash, if you are a real estate agent and you're watching this video and you want to have a conversation with me about potentially working together in 2025 as your coach to help you build and scale your income by being a listing agent, I'm going to put a link in the description right underneath this video. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So why is the housing market not going to crash? All right. Well, let's start off with something that you all know, but as a good reminder, let's just go back to this simple concept of supply and demand. And with this simple concept, as all of you know, that the price of any good, and especially real estate, but we're talking about anything in the world, as supply of said resource increases, price goes down, right? So we know that. However, when supply is low and demand is high, the exact opposite is true. Now, all of you know that. However, this is what's really being missed when people are these people that are selling fear that the housing market and prices are going to crash. In this case, Dent's talking about a 50 to 80% housing market crash. Let's first look at housing supply and then just prices. And this has been true forever, but this graph goes back to 1999. And the light blue line is home prices, and the dark blue line represents housing supply. Now, you can clearly see, there's just no debate and there's no, hopefully, confusion, that when supply is low, prices are high. And when supply is high, prices are low. Like you can see this, the last time the housing market crashed in 2008, 2009, look what housing supply did. Housing supply shot way up, which as a result, home prices plummeted. And then what happened? Well, as supply starting to come back down, home prices did what? They shot up. And now as we sit here today, we're in that exact same boat. And so never a time in history has there been a time where this has not been true. And so when we just look at where we're at today, this is what people like Dent, I think, for whatever reason, I mean, just are missing the boat. And so let's look at the last time the housing market actually crashed. So when we look at inventory, the last time home prices actually crashed, which was 2007, 2008, 2009, inventory, we're talking about unsold inventory. Homes for sale on the market were around 4 million homes for sale. At the time, the population was about 300 million people. Well, let's just fast forward to what we have right now as I'm making this video. Population has grown by 39 million people. So we have almost 40 million more people, which we're going to talk about those people in just a second in great detail. And look where inventory is at. 1.35 million homes. Now, this 1.35 million homes represents actives and pendings. This is both. If we actually just look at what's active on the market for all the demand, even though interest rates are still hovering right around 7%, you only have about 720,000 homes that are actually available for purchase. Because if we go back, of the 1.35, you still have a huge portion of that that is pending and getting ready to close. And so in reality, there's only 720,000 as of November 2024. There's just 720,000 homes for sale. Versus the last time the housing market crashed, like I just showed you, that number being at 4 million. Now, that's just to start. There's a couple other key things here. So we have to look at this question. And this question of supply and demand. And one of the biggest questions is, are there enough homes for sale to meet buyer demand? All right, well, let's just explore this a bit more. So if you look on the screen right now, this is the 2025 home sale appreciation forecast. These are just home sales, okay? These are not home prices, this is home sales. So you can see what NAR is projecting. They have the highest forecast of 4.9 million. Fannie Mae at 4.5 million. The Mortgage Banker Association at 4.3. Goldman at 4.2. And then Housing Wire at 4.2. Okay, so if you take all those and then you put an average on them, it's just under 4.5 million home sales are projected in 2025, which is a nice little increase coming out of 2024, where home sales were really, really down. Prices were still up. But we're talking about, remember, we're talking about a home price crash. We're talking about home prices, whether or not they're going to crash or not. So if this is where home sales are forecasted to be, then we have to look at, well, where's the supply? And here's what we can look at. All right. So check this out. You guys can all do the math with me. But if you take this inventory, which is what we have right now, and you say, okay, well, let's just do some simple math here. I'm going to grab my calculator and you guys can do the same thing. If we have 720,000 homes that are on the market and that number is going to continue to grow, we know that that number will continue. It's already been growing. You can see on the graph right now, it's been growing all year. It's going to continue to grow. But if we end up in 2025 with, call it, I don't know, 850,000 active homes for sale on the market. And so let's just use 850,000. And we know that there's 4.5 million home sales for the year. If we divide that by 12, that's 375,000 sales per month on average. Now, if we just calculate the absorption rate and we say, okay, if there's about 850,000 homes for sale at any given time, and there's 375,000 home sales per month, you can see there's about 3 months worth of inventory. And if you look at Redfin's latest report as of October 2024, look at the months of inventory. 3. That is what the reality is right now. We're sitting at about 3, even if you want to push that, 3.5 months worth of supply. Well, what does that actually mean, Brandon, you ask me? Well, what kind of market are we in? That's what it tells us. And so there's the graph on screen right now. If we just look at this, in a seller's market, what that means, all of this has to do with supply and demand. Like we've been talking about this entire video. This is why I think Dent is so off and so many other people selling the fear and all the fear mongers around the housing market crash who've been saying the housing market's going to crash since forever. I guess eventually they're going to be right. Eventually they're going to be able to say, well, see, I told you. Yeah, but if you're saying that for 30 years in a row, perhaps one year you're going to get it right. Now, this seller's market is where inventory is, we'll say 3 months or less. A balanced market is anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And then a buyer's market is from six months or more of inventory. As we go into 2025, yes, some markets are higher than others. I get it. I totally get it. Even if you are at 3, 3.5, 4, even 4.5 months worth of inventory, we're still far, far, far away from what would be considered a buyer's market, whereas there are more homes on the market than there are buyers willing to buy them. And that is the only time we see actually home prices go down. And so right now, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that at all. And so furthermore, not only are we not seeing that right now, the question you've got to be asking yourself is, okay, well, if not in 2025, what does it look like over the next 10 years? What can we forecast over the next 10 years that would suggest that home prices would potentially crash? Well, let's just look at it. So if you're looking at the screen right now, there's a graph, and this graph has a couple different things on it. It has generations, Boomer, Gen X, Millennials, Gen Zs, their average age, the population, their home ownership rate. So this is the rate to which they own homes. And then their home owner rate by the time they were 30 and by the time they were 40. Now, if you look at just millennials, okay, they range from 28 to 43 years old. Their median age is 30, all right? It's 30, about 45 million of them. Their homeowner rate right now is about 33%. Now, if we just take the millennials, and we say over the next 10 years, they're on average 30 right now. In the next 10 years, they're going to be 40. What is that going to look like? Well, we know, based on the data, that about by age 40, 55% of them will own homes, which is another 10 million homeowners in this country in the next 10 years with just millennials. Now, let's take Gen Zs. Okay, so let's just take Gen Zs for a second. Gen Zs, which is their median age is 20 right now, and their homeowner rate is only 8%, right? Because they're still young. What is that going to look like over the next 10 years? So from the time they are 20 to when they're 30, we know that about 33% will own a home. Well, that's an increase of 25%. Or if you do the math, it's 17 million more homeowners in the next 10 years. Now, if we just look at those two groups, millennials and Gen Zs, you got 10 million more millennials in the next 10 years, they're going to be homeowners. You got 17 million more Gen Zs. You add that up, you get 27 million more homeowners in the next 10 years. Now, yes, probably about 50% of the Gen Zers are going to get married and they're going to buy homes as couples. So yes, you can cut that number down. But even if you cut that number in half and half of them bought homes together, that's still 18.5 million homeowners in the next 10 years. So then the question is, how many homes are we expected to build over the next 10 years? Well, you can do the research yourself, but we're projected to build about 14 million homes, which keeps us in a shortage of about 4.5 million homes. And what do we know about the law of supply and demand? We just spent this entire video talking about it. If we have an inventory shortage, meaning that there is more demand than there is supply, we know that's going to be true for 2025. So we know that home prices, and that's why home prices are projected to yet again go up another 2-3%. Nothing crazy like we've seen over the last couple of years, but nonetheless, they are projected to go up another 2-4%. But even if you look at this in the long term, inventory is still going to be a challenge. Inventory is still going to be an issue. And so, no, I don't see how there could be a housing market crash in 2025. And I don't see how there could be a housing market crash in the foreseeable future.